Hi, chat time again. I got a very interesting email this week. Well, interesting to me. It gave me a link to a good friend of mine on YouTube, I think he was, and he was on about the well-known thing that artists talk about, which is, oh, it was a terrible audience last night, it was a good audience last night, and in the middle audience. And he came up with some kind of mathematical formula as to why an audience could be good, an audience could be bad. And I have to disagree with him, and that's okay, because he's a friend of mine. And when you disagree with somebody, you can still be friends, okay? And you must consider the other argument, reasoning, and then decide whether you agree with it. Good audiences, bad audiences, are American audiences better than British audiences, and so on. And I really don't think there's any difference in any audience. Early on in his discussion, he did button onto something that I thought was very relevant, far more than the audience. The audience itself is made up of fat people and thin people and happy people and sad people, somebody whose job's gone, it's a mixture. And your job as an entertainer is to turn that mixture into a mob, a crowd, a group, having a good time, forgetting their worries, their cares, the things that are going wrong. Now that's your job. On the other hand, he mentioned something early on that gave him the impression, gave him the feeling it was a bad audience. And that was that the venue could be wrong. Now that's true. The venue can be wrong. And if the venue is wrong, your job again is to try to make them forget the venue, forget the conditions and the crud that's around you. When I started out doing the working men's clubs, which is a phenomenon of the working areas of the United Kingdom, I used to get an act come off stage and say, "Whoa, they're a terrible audience." And in my head, and sometimes I confess my mouth came out with it, I would say, well, Sammy Davis Jr. could entertain them. And I would get some funny looks or some discussion about that. But that's true. He could. For those who are very young, I feel sorry for you if you never you've got no chance of seeing him now, get to see Sammy Davis Jr. because he was the greatest entertainer of my lifetime. And yes, he used to be able to pick audiences up. Did he have tough nights? I'll bet he did. And I'm not bad at my job, but I too have had tough nights, and particularly nowadays, because the lighting in places where you go to do after dinners or you go to do corporate jobs, that kind of thing, they book in lighting companies who are only used to lighting for disco, for dancing. So it's all kind of not focused on an area where you're going to work. I've taken lately to insisting somebody provide me with a follow spot. That's one of those big lights that goes wom, wom, wom and follows the artist. So at least I will stay bright. But the actual group themselves, the audience themselves, if you lose the audience, then you can generally trace it, I know it sounds weird, to the first 10 seconds, 30 seconds at the most. You did something wrong. You walked on scared maybe. You were insecure walking on stage. You weren't positive. You weren't giving them this feeling of, oh, we can relax. This person knows what they're doing. So I don't think that's the audience's fault. I think that's the entertainer's fault. And of course you will argue with me, especially if you're a pretty bad entertainer. But it's true. When I was doing a summer season one time in Great Yarmouth, which is way over on the east coast, I do this routine with ropes. And I realized that doing that, twice nightly, da-be-da-be-da-be-da. One night the audience were applauding and I couldn't remember doing it. what an insult to my audience. I really couldn't. My head had been off shopping tomorrow. So from that moment on, I made sure that although the general trend is the same, the flow is the same, well, I can tell you that I deliberately vary my words. I will change the adjectives and all that, because one was grammatically trained, you know. But it was just, but I don't want ever to go back to that. And the other thing I practiced then, though, having become aware of what I could do on stage, was I used to practice deliberately mistiming stuff and losing the audience and seeing how fast I could get them back. So I was not just rehearsing the general flow, I was rehearsing for being in trouble. In my lifetime, the entertainers that I have watched walk on stage, like Val Doonican, Max Bygraves, Shirley Bassey, when they come on stage, you can feel the audience go, oh, because they know nothing's going to go wrong. And if it does go wrong, that entertainer will handle it. So me, sorry mate, and you know who you are, but I don't think there's a bad audience. I really don't.